She was just a girl, living in a quiet village near the forests of Ruthenia, was now Ukraine. She had no title, no army, no protection. Then one night, it all disappeared. Raiders struck. Homes were burned. Screams tore through the night sky. And she, like thousands of others, was thrown in chains and sold at the slave markets of Constantinople. Her name was erased. Her past, wiped clean. From that moment on, she belonged to someone else. To the outside world. She was just another frightened girl in the Sultan's harem. A place so beautiful it looked like paradise, but inside, it was a battlefield. A place where smiles were masks, where women were pawns, and giving birth to a son could mean life or death. But this girl was different. She would not just survive the harem. She would take it over. Through charm, manipulation, and ruthless ambition, she rose from the lowest rank to become the legal wife of Sultan Suleiman, a position no slave girl had ever held before. She played the game better than anyone. She silenced rivals, buried enemies, and eventually, she controlled the Ottoman Empire from behind the curtain. This is not the story of a fairy tale romance. This is the story of a woman who turned chains into a crown and became the most dangerous queen the empire had ever known. Her name was Hurrem Sultan, and this is how she rose. No one recorded her real name. No portrait was drawn. No letters survived. Before the palace, she was just a teenage girl, maybe 14, maybe younger, living somewhere near the Dniester River, in the far reaches of Eastern Europe. She was someone's daughter, maybe someone's sister, and if the world had left her alone, she probably would have grown up, married a local boy, and disappeared into history like millions of others. But the world didn't leave her alone. One morning, the sky filled with smoke. The Crimean Tatars, warriors allied with the Ottoman Empire, rode in fast and without mercy. Villages were burned, men slaughtered, and the young were taken, chained, herded, branded, and marched hundreds of miles south, across rough terrain, to the slave markets of Constantinople. There, she was inspected like livestock. Eyes, teeth, skin, hips. A eunuch nodded. She was purchased and delivered not to a brothel, not to a rich merchant's home, but to the imperial harem of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. She had no idea what that meant, but she would learn quickly. The harem wasn't just a prison made of silk and gold. It was a school of survival, and every girl in it had one goal, to bear the Sultan a son, because in the Ottoman Empire, sons meant power, and women who gave birth to sons were elevated, fed, protected. But those who didn't, they were discarded, forgotten, or worse. The girl was renamed Hurrem. It meant the cheerful one. A cruel joke, maybe, or a test. They gave her perfume and poetry, but also rules. Obey, smile, never speak first, never show anger, never refuse. She learned the ways of the palace, how to walk, how to bow, how to seduce. But deep inside, something was watching, waiting. Other girls prayed for the Sultan's favor, but Hurrem planned, because unlike the others, she had already lost everything. Her home, her name, her freedom. So she had nothing left to fear, and that made her dangerous. Very soon, she would stop being the girl with no name, and start becoming the woman who would destroy centuries of tradition. But no one, not even the Sultan, saw her coming. From the outside, the Sultan's harem looked like paradise. Domes of gold, walls of marble, women dressed in silk and bathed in rose water. But inside it was a war zone. There were no swords, no shields, only whispers, eyes, smiles so sweet they could kill. Hurrem was just one among hundreds of concubines, each one trained to be obedient, graceful, and forgettable. They were called odalisks. Pretty, silent, disposable. But Hurrem didn't want to be pretty. She wanted to be remembered. The Sultan already had a favorite, Mahidevran. She wasn't just a concubine. She was the mother of the Sultan's eldest son, Prince Mustafa. Beautiful, proud, and deeply rooted in palace power. Everyone assumed Mahidevran would rise with Mustafa, that she would become the future Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother. And Hurrem? She was just a girl in the background for now. But Hurrem had something none of the others had. strategy. She studied Suleiman. Not just how to please him, but how to get inside his mind. She didn't throw herself at him like the others. She made him curious. She smiled when she was insulted. She laughed when she was humiliated. It was a performance. And Suleiman, he was captivated. Soon Hurrem was summoned again. And again. And within months, she was no longer just another odalisque. She was the favorite. The harem began to shift. Mahidevran saw it. She knew what was happening. And she hated it. Tension boiled. The older women whispered that Hurrem was using black magic, that no slave girl could be that lucky. Then came the moment Hurrem had waited for. She became pregnant, with a son, and then another, and another. She gave the Sultan 5 children, including multiple sons. That wasn't just rare. That was dangerous, because it meant Hurrem now had a stake in the future of the empire. She was no longer a slave, no longer a girl with no name. She was a mother of princes, and a threat to everyone who stood in her way, even Mahidevran. In the Ottoman Empire, the rules of the harem were older than the empire itself, and no woman, not one, had ever broken them and lived to tell the tale. But Hurrem wasn't like the others. By law, a concubine could bear the Sultan only one son. Once she did, she would be sent away to raise that prince in a distant province, never to see the Sultan again. This was done to prevent favoritism, to protect the line of succession. It was tradition. It was sacred. Hurrem ignored it. She gave Suleiman a son and then stayed. No exile. No quiet departure. Instead, she gave him another son. And another. Until she had 5 children by the Sultan, including 4 boys. It was unheard of. But she wasn't done breaking rules. Most concubines lived and died without ever becoming a wife. Even Mahidevran, the mother of the Sultan's firstborn, was never officially married to him. But Hurrem? She did the unthinkable. She refused to sleep with the Sultan again. Yes, a slave girl told the most powerful man in the world. No, not out of pride, but calculation. She knew the Sultan was obsessed. She knew he would want her even more. And then, just as she predicted, Suleiman caved. In a move that shocked the entire empire, he married her. A formal Islamic wedding. Public. Legal. The Sultan, the shadow of God on earth, made a former slave his queen. It had never happened before. And it would never happen again. The palace exploded in gossip. Some were horrified, others impressed. But all of them knew. Hurrem was now untouchable. And her enemies started falling. The first was Mahidevran. Once proud and powerful, Mahidevran watched as her influence vanished overnight. She had 1 son. Hurrem had 4. And Suleiman's heart and attention were no longer hers. Desperate, Mahidevran attacked Hurrem, literally. Some accounts say she struck her, clawed her face, tore out her hair. But it didn't matter, because instead of punishing Hurrem, Suleiman exiled Mahidevran to the provinces. Her downfall was complete. And Hurrem, she was now the unchallenged queen of the harem. But the harem was only the beginning. She began to whisper into the Sultan's ear about court politics, war strategies, and imperial appointments. Ambassadors from Europe started noticing that the Sultan now consulted her on key decisions. She wasn't just a consort anymore. She was a partner. And soon, even more heads began to roll. One of them belonged to Ibrahim Pasha, the Sultan's childhood friend and Grand Vizier. He had once called Hurrem just a concubine, a servant, a distraction. He forgot one thing. In the harem, distractions can become queens, and queens can become executioners. Late one night, Suleiman had Ibrahim arrested. He was strangled in his sleep with a silk cord, the method reserved for nobles. Many whispered Hurrem had orchestrated it, but no one could prove it, because her fingerprints were never on the knife. Just her voice in the Sultan's ear. Studio microphone narrator, Jong Di, Nu Dang Koi Tam. She didn't raise armies. She didn't wear a crown. But one by one, her enemies vanished, and she remained smiling, because in the Ottoman Empire, where no woman was supposed to rule, Hurrem wasn't just rewriting the rules. She was burning them. On paper, she never ordered a single death. She never signed a warrant, never held a blade. But inside the palace, everyone knew. If Hurrem smiled at you, you were safe. If she stopped smiling, you were in danger. By now, she wasn't just queen of the harem. She was the Sultan's closest advisor. A woman who came from nothing was now helping steer the most powerful empire on earth. And yet, her biggest enemy wasn't a rival concubine. It was Mustafa, Mahidevran's son. He was handsome, noble, a war hero. The army loved him. The people adored him. He was the natural heir. But not Hurrem's heir. Her own sons were younger, weaker in status. If Mustafa rose to the throne, her children would die. That was the law. And Hurrem? She knew the empire only had room for one queen mother. So rumors began. Nothing direct, nothing provable, just whispers. That Mustafa was ambitious, that he was plotting to overthrow his father, that he would not wait for the throne, he would take it. Suleiman began to doubt. The boy he once cradled now seemed like a threat. And then came the fateful day. In a tent, on a quiet military campaign, Suleiman summoned Mustafa. The prince bowed, loyal, proud, and as he rose, the guards closed in. They wrapped a silk cord around his neck. He struggled. He gasped. He died. The empire was stunned. The people mourned. The army grumbled. But no one dared speak Hurrem's name, because once again, her hands were clean. But her mind? Her mind had just removed the greatest obstacle to her family's future. Studio microphone narrator, Zhang Cham, Rung Min. In the palace, people stopped looking her in the eye. Even the Grand Vizier now spoke in careful tones, because they all knew. She didn't need poison. She didn't need a knife. She had something far more dangerous, the trust of a man who ruled the world. When Hurrem Sultan died in 1558, the empire fell silent. No execution, no exile, no final scandal. She died peacefully, in her golden chambers, wrapped in the same silks once used to chain her. But her death didn't bring peace. It brought chaos, because Hurrem had done something no woman before her had ever dared. She planted her bloodline in the heart of the empire, and now that she was gone, her sons were ready to fight for what she left behind. Prince Selim, Prince Bayezid, brothers by blood, rivals by destiny. The Ottoman throne could only belong to one of them, and just like Hurrem had once done in the harem, they now turned to whispers, alliances, and betrayal. The empire watched as her sons tore at each other, each one trying to finish the game their mother had started. In the end, it was Selim who won, but not without blood. Bayezid was hunted down, strangled, just like Mustafa. Studio microphone narrator, Zhang Tram Yuam. Hurrem's legacy wasn't just power. It was a system of survival, a new order. She had shattered centuries of tradition, replacing the calm brutality of the old harem with cold, calculated politics. After her death, every sultan's mother would take power behind the scenes. Some called it the Sultanate of Women. But really, it was the world Hurrem built. A world where queens didn't wear crowns. They wore silence. They wore secrets. And they ruled from behind curtains no one dared to lift. Today, you can still visit her tomb, next to Suleiman's, in the Suleimani Mosque in Istanbul, a resting place fit for an empress. But she was never meant to be one. She was meant to be a slave, a girl with no name, a forgotten footnote in someone else's story. Instead, she rewrote the story. She claimed the empire, and she left behind not just a name, but a warning. Never underestimate the woman who has nothing to lose. If you thought this story was wild, wait till you hear what happened after her sons took power, because the empire she built was just beginning to bleed.